Hello everyone, it is the Astro Chick, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about all of the change occurring, this great transitional period that we're going through. It's a historical fourth turning of generations, and I'm going to discuss the chart of America, the United States. Both the natal and progress charts are pertinent to this conversation. Also, we're going to look at the relation to the shooting event that occurred in New York City on the 4th of December, and seeing this as like a trigger moment for society in many ways. But we're going to discuss it from an astrological perspective, but also, just a general idea of what's going on with the people of America. I think it's important. I'm going to touch upon all of the transition that we're going through. So I hope this video is not too long, but try to stay tuned and let's get to it. So right now we're all in a very powerful time of change. We know it now. Even people who are not historians or astrologers, they have a very real sense of change that's occurring in our society and the world at large, but also in America. I think that we chose change, even if we didn't choose it. The election kind of shows us that I think Americans are looking for a catalyst for change, and possibly that's what they see in DT. So, we're just going to have to live through it and see if the creation of the future comes from resistance, because historically this cycle, the end of a cycle like this, we're at a fourth turning, it's a time of revolution and a time of great change and a lot of conflict and crisis, and we're all experiencing that kind of stuff. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I feel like if there's a lot of people that talk about war and like future war, and I think that if any kind of war occurred in America, I don't think it would be a civil war, y'all. Okay, I know they want us to fight amongst ourselves, but I got no problem with my neighbors. Like, my problem is with the issue at hand, which is corporations and the greed of the rich, the inequality that exists in America, and our rotten systems that don't work for us and actually hurt us, right? So we must remember at this time that it's a very delicate time. We're like in the middle of the bridge to the future. We're in, a great transitory time when cycles are ending, new cycles are beginning. And this is just a visual of like all of the outer planets will be in new signs. They start to ingress in 2025. There's a retrograde cycle, and then by 2026 they go ingress into the next sign, for the whole cycle. But by 2026, Mars will also be in its new synodic cycle. So we have so many new cycles and new zodiacal cycles of planets occurring in the next year and a half. Okay, very busy time. Also, we have yet to see the changes that are going to be made with the new administration, right? We have an idea of the things that are going to happen, and they terrify us, right? But also, we have to remember that in a time of transition, we can't let all the changes be made for us. We have to affect change as well, right? So this is just a visual here. You can see all of the outer planets by 2026 will be in new zodiacal signs and cycles. So yeah, we're really getting into that fresh new time that is known as the future. It's important in all this time of great change that we realize that there are forces working in the universe and that we're not crazy, because a lot of times, like, I've seen a lot of people facing their crisis. Everyone is in crisis, okay? Everyone has issues and difficulty in life right now. We all have a battle. And so this collective battle and this pressure that we all feel, it can make us feel crazy. But this here is just to show you a taste of all of the new cycles that have begun since 2020. And I think I did a video on this as well, going through each and every one of them. I'm not going to explain every single one of them, but if you look here, like, there's a lot of new shit coming up. There's a lot of new things that have already happened. And if we take it over a decade period of time, it began in 2020, like by 2030, we should be seeing a lot, like I think by 2028, we're going to see a lot of new energy, like actually start to manifest, okay? Because in the transition, you can't see any of the change because the change is actually like occurring under the surface, especially in America, because the progressed new moon phase is a very dark phase, where everything is underground. All of the changes are underneath the surface, right? But we still have new cycles to come as well. So I think 2025 is like the middle of the road, the middle of the bridge, right? It is smack dab in the middle of change. And that's why this time is what I consider a great transition time. It's a very historical time. Like this period of time will be written about in history books because of all of the changes that are being made to society, and how people are changing and through generations, and also the changing of the guard that's occurring in our institutions and social structures, and the government as well. Like we're going to have a lot of governmental change here as Saturn moves through the end degrees of Pisces and ingresses into the sign of Aries with Neptune there. It's going to be wild. Like, hold on, right? Buckle up. I have so much faith for the Pluto and Sagittarius generation. As a Sagittarius rising, I can relate to these people, even though these are my children. These are my nieces and nephews. These are my friends' kids, right? And they're not even kids anymore, all right? This generation of 95 to 2008, these are young adults, okay, who many, are at the age where they're expected to live full adult lives with much less opportunity than the past generations have had. But as a Sag rising, this Pluto of this generation falls in my first house, and I have to say that this generation of kids have changed me. They have taught me so much, and maybe I just realize it more because I'm a Sag rising and I was more open to the changes in which I went through, with this generation. These are also my friends. I have younger friends who, at the age of my kids, I work with a lot of younger people, and they just expand my life in so many ways. So I have a real love of the younger generations, all of them, but particularly Pluto and Sag, because like I said, I relate it to my own children. Sagittarius generational people of any kind. You could be ascendant, sun, moon. Maybe it's your dominant type of energy, angular. But generational wise, with the Pluto and Sagittarius, these kids are like seekers, all right? And it's like young millennial Gen Z kids. So I think 96 is the cutoff for millennials. My kid was born in 96, and he's an adult, full-blown adult now. But if you think about it, like the middle of the transition time between childhood and adulthood would be like 26, because you're at that age where, like in America, 18, boom, they think you're an adult. And we all as parents and mothers know that 18 is not grown, right? It's not mature. It's not fully ripe. 29 and a half is the age of the first Saturn return, and that is a time in which true maturity is tested, right? So really it's between the ages of 18 and 29 and a half, and that's a nodal return, like 19 to 29 and a half. Well, I think nodal return is like a 19 and a half year cycle, right? But my whole point is like this in-between time for young people is the transition. It's the middle ground. It's the in-between being young and being mature. And it's wild that like this is the generation that is going to have to deal with a lot of the change that occurs, because they are in the middle of the middle and we are in this middle of transition. Like we're literally, 2025 will be the middle of the decade of change, right? We'll be in the center of the bridge to the future. So there's a lot of centralized type of energy when it comes to this generation. And it's a very American type of energy because of the ascendant in America's Sibley's chart is Sagittarius. And interestingly enough, the degree of the sun, the day of the shooting event, was 12 Sag, and that is the degree of the ascendant of America. So that's why this event and the context of what happened is very visible. It's being talked about, is because this is changing the face of America. It's an unveiling of truth that's very dark, a dark truth that is now come to light, but yet everyone is very aware of it. They just feel very powerless in the face of such a giant industry that constantly abuses us, right? And the majority, more than the majority of Americans, have had to deal with this in a very personal way. So the uniform reaction in an unempathetic manner towards the victim, CEO, RIP, it's not surprising to the everyday person, right? To the working class, everyday American. But the power systems, the media, the institutions, the systems of power, they're shocked because they're like, oh, but you know, you're supposed to put up with this stuff like for generations, but we're to the point where that's done and over with. This event occurred when the moon, the progressed moon in America's chart, was at the 29th degree. So there was a final ending to this type of secret. The Pluto generation and Sagittarius, they have unveiled this darkness in America, right? And it's for everyone to see right there on the face of America, is that healthcare sucks and that it actually kills people. And then just also like the fact that the young people have to kind of show us this. They're the ones that are impulsively making actions to bring awareness to truth, because awareness to truth will bring action to betterment of life. And we can see that beginning already. Yeah, the media doesn't want to talk about it at all, but guess what? It's an issue that everyone faces. So of course we're going to talk about it. And if the media don't talk about it, people are going to talk about it, because now we have a little thing called social media, where there are other voices out there that we can listen to and exchange with, right? So I think that mass media is going to eventually, like, so many systems are changing, folks. Like, there are things that are going to change that we won't believe will change. I mean, we're not quite to the finalization of change right now. We have a lot of different, we have a couple more cycles that will end, like Saturn at the last degree of Pisces. So Saturn will come to the point where the progressed moon of America was at the time of the shooting, so maybe laws will change because of that energy. What happened? I mean, I'm just saying, this is how stuff gets going, right? 0 degrees of Aries, that was an extremely important place for America, because that is, Aries is where the ecliptic energy of spring kind of started this onslaught of transition and change. The transitions and changes have been occurring since 2020, but in March we had the Great North American Eclipse, which was, viewed by a lot of Americans, and this was, indicative of great change for us as a country. And it was at that same time, in that ecliptic season between the solar and lunar eclipses, that America's new moon phase of a new lunation cycle began in the progress chart. So I think it's all very relative to where we are now as a nation and the changes that are occurring, and the fact that the new moon for America is a dark moon, right? The new moon lunation through the progress chart is the one I'm talking about. It's like the hidden stuff is like so on point, all right? But anyway, so a new moon phase is very dark. everything that has changed, the new that is going to be coming, is under the surface. It's like the seed is cracked, but you can't see anything because it's working its way up to the surface. Now in 2028, America's progressed moon will come to conjunct Venus in the sign of Taurus, and the moon will be in its exaltation in conjunction to the ruler of Taurus. It's very fecundant, very fertile, very yummy type of moon. So I think that with the struggle we're about to face here in the next couple of years, with the moon, the progressed moon for America being in Aries, I think that it's going to be for the betterment of life in general. And I think it will be a good outcome after a couple years of intense struggle, right? And I know people don't want to hear that, but that's just how it works, man. Like, you got to struggle to make things better, you know? So we got to get to work. And this generation of Pluto and Sagittarius, they are obviously putting their feet forward. And yeah, just remember the fact that Mars is the current ruler of the progressed moon, that we will only grow in our agitation and our anger, right? It's going to be a very aggressive, if not violent, time among people, among Americans. Not saying that we'll fight each other, but it might be a class war of some kind. You know, I could see that happening. I don't think that any kind of war that comes to us is going to be civil. I think it's going to be more like a revolutionary type of energy. So we will see how it pans out, but it's just wild that the anaretic progressed moon was at the very last degree of Pisces, and that America's chart is so mirrored by this event. It's just something to pay attention to. This quote is interesting, so you should pause and read this quote. I find it very relative to the times in which we are faced with, okay? I also find it extremely interesting that Frederick Engels, how do we say his name? I'm not good. I always say words the wrong way. Frederick Engels. He was like a co-creator of communist literature. So people have different feelings about him, right? And I've seen plenty of people take quotes from people who I do not agree with and I look down upon. So I'm sure that some people aren't going to like this quote, right? But aside from that, it's very relative to the situation at hand, especially the disguised malicious murder which none can defend himself, which does not seem what it is, because no man sees the murderer, because the death of a victim seems a natural one, like healthcare denial, since the offense is more one of omission than of commission. Yeah. So that's very interesting. Like, you should read this, pause it and read. But also for astrologers who might be watching this video, check out the chart of Friedrich Engels. Very interesting, right? Even if you don't like his politics. He has a Sagittarius Sun stellium. Crazy, right? Because this is a Sag vibe. All right, this is why I included this. Very Sag vibe. Aries Saturn. Okay, so that's the times to come, baby. All right. And he has Pisces Jupiter, North Node in Pluto, which is, you know, Jupiter is the ruler, the traditional ruler of Pisces. But Pisces is one of those energies at hand right now with the endings of cycles. You know, 29 degrees of Pisces is important in a lot of the charts we've discussed here. And then, of course, you know, he was a Leo rising. So that fire rising, I think fire rising people, fire dominant people, even fire air people in the next couple years, they're going to get very loud. They're going to get very eloquent. They're going to get very creative. And I think we're going to hear a lot more of protest music and speeches on poverty and inequality and human rights. Okay. I think that there will be many conversations, discussions, debates, arguments about war and also inalienable rights of people, like women, to their body. And I just think there's going to be a lot of conflict in the next couple of years. But it will promote a betterment of life. It would change things. Like when we struggle, that is how we make change. Because power is never it doesn't concede, right? Nobody's going to give us anything. We're going to take it anyway in ways that move society to change laws and protect people and stop corruption, right? There's a lot of things that can be done within the structures, but the thing about now is that the old systems are crumbling and the new systems will be developed. And so in a way, can any of the old institutions be saved? Which ones will survive the change, I guess, is the question, right? Because if we see this as an inevitable thing where the new will overtake the old and the times will be very different and the institutions will have to fundamentally be transformed. I mean, it's hard to transform an institution from even the inside. Bernie Sanders tried to do that with the Democratic Party and it didn't work. And so sometimes you got to start from scratch, man. I don't know. But it's just interesting to think about the times, this particular author, his astrology, and the vibe that Sag is just pulsating through the generations. Palpable. So if the moon is equivalent to the people of a nation, Mars is our willpower or the force that we put upon the world, the exertions that we make in order to gain the desires, right? With the progressed moon being at the anaretic degree of Pisces the day of the event, you could look at this as a culmination of a common emotion and also the final ending, right? Because of the context of the last degree of the whole zodiac, okay? There was a finality to this, and perhaps this was the veil being pulled off of everyone's eyes, where we kind of all know what's going on with the healthcare industry, but like we feel powerless to it. I mean, that's why denial is one of those objectives of insurance companies, because they'll deny you, and some people won't even what do you call it? Appeal. Won't even appeal it, right? For whatever reason. Perhaps they don't know how the system works. They don't know how to file. Maybe they're too sick. I mean, there's 1,000 different reasons that a person would not appeal a denial. But then you have people who do appeal, and it takes time. So that delay, right? We all get it, right? And so the finality of this event, it's as if like we can no longer say that this can stand, because it's an issue that affects many people. We have to take this moment and this opportunity to bring this to light and to discuss this issue so that things can be changed, or at least we can all unify behind a common goal, right? It's interesting that now the progressed moon has moved into the sign of Aries, and Mars is in charge of our moon. So it's combative, it's martial, it's very cardinal, forward thrusting, leadership oriented. I think there's going to be a lot of movement and growth in the people and more action, possibly after the Mars retrograde. So Mars is currently, the transit Mars is in Leo in retrograde. The day of the event, it was stationing, or let's put it this way, like it was extremely slow. It was at 6 degrees for a while, and that's the degree that it turned retrograde at, okay? So it stationed retrograde 2 days after the event, kind of just lingered at 6 degrees. So this point was a focus, this degree of Leo. It's a focus point. Also, it's the degree in the Sibley's chart of America. It is the degree of the North Node of America. Okay, and so the North Node is often associated with, depending on what astrologer you speak with, because it means different things to different astrologers, different branches of astrology, right? But basically, the North Node can be seen as the future, the evolution of our soul, that which we must learn and experience in this lifetime to level up. It is the unknown. It is something that we need to achieve in this lifetime, like the purpose or the goal of the evolution of our souls. And the South Node is associated with the past, the skills that we're inherently born with, the things that we're very comfortable with. So, it's also associated with like letting go of things and the things that we need to shed in this lifetime. Of course, you don't want to be extreme and like shed everything that you know. We need our wisdom, we need our experience, we need our skill, right? But there's like a balance that has to be made between the nodes, between the past and the future, between the familiar and the unfamiliar. Anyway, Mars retrograde occurring on the degree of the North Node means that this is a focal point for any kind of action that's going to be taken as far as in Marsy ways, right? Like force and will and war and desire and passion, right? Also, it's retrograding the end degrees of, it will go back into Cancer. Cancer is the sign of America's Sun and Mercury, right? It's, Cancer Leo is important for America, these signs, because of the North Node, the Sun, and Mercury, but also because the president-elect has his Mercury in Cancer and also his Mars in Leo. And I think that that's pertinent. It's very, the astrology with DT is wild because it's very American. Anyway, so the sword is pointing in the direction of America. Mars is like, we have a mission, okay? And I think the retrograde is allowing us to develop some kind of strategy, because retrograde is often a reflection, a time of reflection, a time of internalized review of our actions, right, or inaction, right, and also a contemplation of how we want to move forward and things that we might have to change as we move forward. So another interesting point is that the transit Jupiter in Gemini stationed retrograde on 21 Gemini, which is Mars's, the United States Mars degree, okay? In the Sibley chart, Mars is located at 21 degrees Gemini. And so Jupiter stationing retrograde on that degree, once again, when planets station either retrograde or direct, they pause on that degree. So it is a focal point. It's a concentration, a focus. So we should look at those degrees and we could, derive some meaning from that stuff. And it's just wild that they all kind of relate to the chart of America. With Sagittarius being the ascendant of America, I think Jupiter rules the face of the United States, and being the sun degree of the event, I think that it is this generation of Pluto and Sagittarius that will really make a mark upon, America and how we move forward and like facing our fears. So Mars is currently in a retrograde in the sign of Leo. It's stationed retrograde at 6 degrees of Leo, which is the degree of America's North Node. Interesting turning point there. It's currently very slow. So when a planet comes to its station, it slows down and then it turns, and then it's going to slowly get faster as it moves backwards, right? But then as it comes to its stationary direct, it's going to slow down before it moves forward again. So, Mars is in a transition, right? It's in an internalized, reflective type of energy where it's very much about the things that we have done, the things that have been done to us. So we're looking into the past, we're looking into possibly strategy for planning for the future, right? But there's not a lot moving forward right now. And now's not the time to make those moves. The moves will come in like 10 weeks or so when Mars goes direct, okay? We'll also come to a point of Mars, a seeding moment in the Mars cycle with the full Mars, which is when Mars is opposite the Sun, which is going to be in January of this next year, 25, January 15th. So, it's a good time to be thinking about your strategy. It's a good time to think about what is your passion in life. What do you want to fight for? Because now's the time to get down, right? Or at least when Mars goes direct, okay? The fact that Mars is retrograding from Leo into Cancer is interesting because Cancer is a huge energy for America as a country. It's our sun sign. It is the Mercury sign, and it's the 8th house in America's chart. So it is a transitional type of energy. It is the bonds and the sharing that is done in the inheritance and legacy of being an American, So the new cycle of Mars actually starts in January of 2026 when all of those other outer planets are beginning new cycles. Mars will begin a new synodic cycle with the Sun. So it will come to a conjunction with the Sun at 20 degrees Capricorn. What's interesting about that degree is that that was the degree of the Sun during the shooting event. Okay, so Mars is going to start a new Mars is going to start a new cycle at the degree of the moon the day of the shooting event. I don't know. I find a lot of these degrees that things are happening at, I find connections between them, and I think it's all very relevant. This is the chart of the event that occurred in New York City, December 4th, 2024. And I just want to point this out because I've been dying to point this out because it bothers me so much. And I know I shouldn't let little things bother me. And technicalities are very annoying, right? But it happened at 6:46 a.m., or at least that's when the 911 call happened. So even if it happened a minute or two before this, if you look at this chart, you can see that the sun was not risen yet, okay? And I grew very frustrated when all of the news outlets, it's almost like they were parroting each other, saying he did this in broad daylight. Okay, it was not broad daylight. Broad daylight is like when the sun is high in the sky, all right? Broad daylight is when the sun is at least above the horizon, okay? This was not daylight, not broad daylight by any means. The only broad part about this energy is Sagittarius, okay? But if you look, the sun is about 3-4 degrees from the ascendant, from the horizon point. So this is technically what we would call civil dawn, which I really like that name because it seems very civil, doesn't it? Or it seems it involves society, right? Also, you can just call it twilight, because twilight could be either when the sun is rising or setting, depending on, what time of day it is. But this would be like a civil twilight, you could call it also. But this was not broad daylight, okay? Anyway, you could see the sun, coming to rise. It hasn't risen yet. We could see Mars in opposition to that dark energy of the Moon, Venus, Pluto down there in the second house of the event, where we have a lot of uncovered mysteries, or at least very dark emotions that people are collectively feeling, what our true, exposing what our true values are when it comes to like valuing, say, an assailant versus a victim, or, looking at it like the CEO wasn't a person, he was part of a corporation. I'm just saying people have different perspectives and they value. We saw in the news recently, how much a homeless person with mental issues was valued when that dude killed him, and now he got off, right? So obviously, like, values vary in our society, but I think we all agreed on the value of this event, right? Because we all kind of came together with very similar opinions, which shocked the institutions. Like, wake up, okay? I think that people are too aware now of systems that don't work because of the struggles that we're going through with the crisis in our everyday life. So, like, it's very hard to not be aware and to not speak your truth at this time, right? As Americans, Sag rising, like, hey, baby, we are very like loud. I think the whole world sees us as very loud people, so, and very opinionated. So this will be a time when people are telling their truths, even if they're very dark. So Saturn's that collective energy, you know, down in the third house of this event, also because the event chart mirrors the chart of America, all right, which is very wild. But so these planetary transits are also falling in these houses of America, right? So Saturn is in that everyday type of third house energy. And we feel that like our everyday is very heavy. You know, I don't know how many people I know that have 2 jobs. Okay. And also everything is so expensive and all of our systems don't work for us. And it's about to get worse. I think it'll get worse before it gets better. All right. But we will see. But lots of changes to come. But yeah, I just wanted to really point out that it was not broad daylight. All right. And that irritates the heck out of me when I hear that over and over and over again from all of the news outlets. It was civil dawn or twilight. Thank you very much. This here is the chart of the secondary progressed chart of America as of today. And what I wanted to point out was that America has begun a new moon phase in the Sibley's chart. So progression, you know, if you don't know, Google it. It's just kind of like a internalized now energy. Also, we use progressions for events that occur because of the changes that are made by the sun and the moon. You know, those cycles are very important for the internal, external workings of either a person or nation or whatever. So we do know from this new moon lunation that occurred in March of 2024, it occurred right smack dab in the middle of the Aries ecliptic season, which brought the Great North American Eclipse. So Aries was this very martial initiative energy that came to us in March of this year. Interestingly enough, at the same time, so America began a new moon phase of its progressed lunation cycle. So new chapter of life for the American people. This occurred at 19 degrees Pisces, right? So ruled by Jupiter. And Jupiter is the face of America. We're Sag rising as well. And Saturn is in Pisces at this moment, as well as Neptune. You know, they'll be crossing the threshold into Aries over the next year. So, a lot going on in that neck of the woods. At the time of the shooting that occurred on the 4th of December, the progressed moon was at the anaretic degree of Pisces. So it was 2956 at the time of the shooting, and then it ingressed into Aries directly afterwards, which is just wild. And that speaks a lot to the feeling of the people of America, right? We had a collective type of energy about what happened that now has moved it into the rulership of Mars, which means that we're more martial about it. We're going to be a little more forthcoming, and we're going to be more cardinal about the way that we proceed emotionally, and the way, you know, because the moon is not just emotions, it's also opinions, it's our physical body. So people might be more active. Of course, I don't think this is going to happen until the Mars retrograde cycle is over in like 11 weeks, maybe even a little bit after that, because it has to start going forward again. But what is so interesting, and I think I'm going to point it out on a different slide, but the moon of the event was 20 degrees of Capricorn, which is the degree that Mars will begin its new synodic cycle in 2026. I find that fascinating because I see all of these threads that kind of come together. So these are points that we should be looking at. 20 Capricorn, you know, 0 Aries, you know, these are important places. 20 Capricorn is also one of those places that was involved in a lot of the great cycles of the outer planets that occurred, the ending and renewal of the cycles that occurred in January and July of 2020. So it's a lot to think about, but I think the progressed lunation, I'm going to give you this one like positive thing that I see coming. So, of course, if you know the phases of the moon, you know that, it continues to progress. Obviously, if it's moved from the 29th degree of Pisces and now it's in Aries, it's in a movement type of situation. The moon moves the fastest, right? It's about a degree per month, whatever. So it's going to take like 2.5 years to get through the sign of Aries, perhaps a little less time than that, right? But once it moves through Aries and it gets into the sign of Taurus, so I think it's 2028. In 2028, the progressed lunation cycle of America will come to the crescent phase, so the waxing crescent. When that occurs, America's progressed moon will be in the sign of Taurus, which is its exaltation, in conjunction with Venus in Taurus, which is the ruler of Venus, or the ruler of Taurus. So this is a very auspicious type of energy. So that's why I think that whatever happens now, I think we can affect the kind of change that will better our lives. I do believe that, okay? And it's something to work towards. And I know it's a lot of work. I know it's not a joyful type of thing, but in times of crisis and adversity, we must overcome. We must. So I also wanted to point out that in the United States Sibley's chart, we have an Aries Chiron at 90 degrees of Aries. And around the time of the solar eclipse, it was at the degree of America. Chiron, transit Chiron was at the degree of America's Chiron. It went retrograde on 19 degrees, I believe, or it's coming back. I don't know. But look, Aries is the longest transit. Aries and Pisces. Those are the two longest transits of Chiron. It's because of the orbit of Chiron is very it's very unbalanced, right? So I like to giggle sometimes when I see online kids with like Chiron in Scorpio or Libra complain about it, and I'm like, yeah, no, like that's the shortest amount of time that Chiron travels through that zodiacal sign, those zodiacal signs of the younger kids, and their return is like they could probably sleep through their return. But for people like me, sorry, I'm getting excited because this is something I try to explain to people of my generation, right? Or even older Gen X people, because I'm 75, so I'm getting to the end of Gen X, but I'm still Gen X. But anyway, Chiron's return for us, those who have the longest transits of Chiron in either Pisces or Aries, it's a 2-year return. And that includes America, because America has Aries and Aries Chiron, okay? Which means we're going to get 3 triggers. We're going to get conjunctions going and retrograde and then coming back, okay? The United States, like I said, 19 degrees Chiron. And the current transit Chiron is in a retrograde at 19 degrees of Aries. So this is very pertinent to the energy of America, right? The retrograde will be in effect until the end of December of 2024, but it will still be very slow and at 19 degrees of Aries, okay? Very pertinent to America, all right? Aries Chiron, so Chiron is the archetype of the wounded healer. It's often the wound that never heals, the thing that we must use, the wound that we use in order to help others, to heal others, right? So it's a great lesson of inner resilience and also forgiveness and healing, right? So with Aries, the Aries archetype is often wound up in like violence and individualism, also abandonment, right? Aries Chiron, I know I have issues, as in all of Gen X, with abandonment, being latchkey kids, being, raising our siblings, but also, the last generation to really have such violence upon us, like our parents physically disciplined us. I don't know if we, and to the point of, I think, like, they also abused us in some ways because it was acceptable in the past. Like, I know people change, society changes, like people don't beat their kids now, but our parents were pretty violent with us, okay? And society too, right? I mean, we were the generation, both my husband and I, we were, thrown out of our houses when we were 17 to start our own lives as adults, We don't do that with our kids. Our kids, we allowed them time to be at home and build up some of their wealth, and also to work and go to school and go to college, so that they had like one up on the world. My husband and I, we were kind of thrown to the wolves. We just had to figure it out, right? And that's a big like Aries Chiron type of energy. Aries Chiron falls in the houses 4, 5 of America, depending on if you use Placidus or whole signs, right? But the fifth house, I associate it to the fifth house a lot because of the gun violence in America that we have that involves our children. Also, just the fact that our kids have been oppressed with debt and their quality of life keeps getting worse. All right. It's harder for them to accomplish the things that we accomplished as teenagers. Okay. And they're like full blown adults now. Okay. So there's a sense of abandonment, social abandonment. And, healing, Chiron healing, it comes through the struggle. So struggling against something builds up our resilience. I know. Like, trauma is not a good thing, all right? And we don't need trauma to become strong people. I get that. But unfortunately, with an Aries Chiron, struggle, violence, oppression, abandonment, these are all things that happen to Aries Chiron, okay? We're left alone a lot. And we're also, it's a hyper individualism, having to do everything on our own, okay? And also like a lot of inner child stuff, So I hope that the generation of Aries Chiron, I hope that we can identify with the youth of today and see that their struggle is our struggle as well, and not fight between generations, but give them the knowledge and understanding they need to succeed in taking over the systems of the world, so that we can get this change going, So the Chiron return in Aries for America is going to last a little longer, but we're in the middle of it. I mean, it's hitting that exact degree in America's chart, and it will trigger these issues through social events, but also in our children and the things that we create. So, yeah, it's something to think about. So this event has triggered a lot of common concerns, social unity in a really wild way, and conscious collective sentiment about the situation that has shocked the system. But we all know what we know, right? There's an overwhelmingly common perception of the CEO, and a lot of people have been shamed about it online, and some people are have more vitriol than others. But I think that across the bandwidth, we all have similar feelings about it, right? But for the minions, the authority media, to shame us, it's very hypocritical because we watch these same people just cheer on genocide every day, and these same people shame victims, shame women, oppress the poor, and just a whole bevy of things that happen that's a big FU to the general public, the working people, especially when they act as if they have no idea why this happened. There is a reason for the action. There's cause and effect. They don't want to go down that road because then it would expose a lot of stuff, and it already has, and the conversation is starting. You could see videos where people tell their experiences or horror stories with the healthcare system in America. I'm waiting for people to start posting pictures of their dead relatives who died under such conditions of denial and delay. right? I think that's coming next. I don't think that this is over with. I think that people now feel they need to, well, we have unified in a way, in opinion, right? Not the same opinion. A lot of people do look at killing as wrong, right? Because it is. But in our society, folks, unfortunately, there's a hypocrisy in which some killings are allowed, you know? If you look at the situation where the guy choked out and killed a homeless man that was mentally ill, you know, he got off. So that was acceptable, right? That was an acceptable death. He killed him with his hands, right? But in this situation, just the machine trying to tell us something we know is totally false. It's like we are in this wild time where we're I guess we're able to see who's on what side, right? By who reports things and how they report it. We can tell who works for the machine, right? And who works for the people. So it's a time of clarification for a lot of us. And I know a lot of people already have a really good idea about who lies on television, but there's just, you know, perspectives are shifting. The fact that, you know, so many people die every year because of healthcare being such a greedy industry where profit over people rule. You know, it's disgusting to people that they would choose money over the lives of our loved ones or ourselves, right? And I found out that 62% of Americans think that there should be some kind of like Medicare for all system, which works. Medicare, Medicaid are good programs that I hope are not destroyed in the future. I hope that they're, you know, invigorated and also like they're extended and they grow. And that is, you know, if Trump legalized marijuana and put a Medicaid for all system in, he would be in all the history books right next to George Washington and Lincoln. I'm just saying, I know a lot of us don't have that kind of hope for DT, but, you know, he's a wild card. We don't know what he's going to do, all right? We have an idea, but I would like to think that even in the bad, there's some good. So hopefully, like, whatever catalytic change occurs because of this administration, that it leads to good things in the end. I know it's a long shot, but I'm a Sag rising, so I have to be ever optimistic, right? And the last thing I want to talk about this is just the fact that, you know, gun violence victims are often depicted in the worst light possible if it's the system that is killing them, right? But this dude, the CEO, RIP, he was a fraudster. He was being federally investigated for insider trading, okay? And they paint him as this loving father and husband, a family man, who in reality, he didn't even live with his wife. They were like separated but not divorced. So he wasn't even a real husband, okay? And I know some people think if a man pays bills, he's a husband, but there's a lot of work that goes into being a husband, okay? And I know it's a very small point, but I think what I'm trying to say here is that, like, the media have cast him in a light that is not his. Like, and you know what they do to the everyday man or woman who's killed by the system. They tell you every little thing that they did, if they even cheated in college. They tell you if they've ever been arrested for speeding. I'm just saying, like, they dig in deep when it comes to victims of the system. But when it comes to a victim who is part of the system, you know, he was a great guy, and you know, it's a senseless crime and no one understands what happened, when in actuality the public understands what happened, and it's hard for them to rectify their feelings because, you know, the healthcare system just does not care about us. So why should we care about them? So there are two books that I recommend you reading if you're interested in astrological patterns, but also historical patterns. I think the two books that really helped me form a lot of my ideas about this time were Cosmos and Psyche by Richard Tarnas. Great book. It really explains the generational planetary alignments and the transits, and all the cycles of the transits, whether it's the conjunction, which is like the beginning of the cycle, the squares coming and going, or the oppositions. Like, it explains a lot of historical patterning, and it'll help you if you're trying to understand the changes that are occurring with the generational planets right now, and even the social planets, because we got all of them. It's not just generational planets, it's social planets, it's personal planets, like everything is changing, right? But also the second book that you should read, and it's not an astrological book. Excuse me. Excuse me. It is a historical book called The Fourth Turning is Here by Neil Howe. Now, Neil Howe is the guy that coined the term millennial. He wrote a bunch of books with a co-author, William Strauss, and it was all about society, generations of people, and history, right? Extremely interesting stuff. And this book, The Fourth Turning is Here, is a follow-up to a book that he wrote with William Strauss in 97 called The Fourth Turning, right? So it's like an updated version of like, oh, hey, we're here now, so let's see what's going on. It's packed full of information. A little scary too, because usually a fourth turning is historically a time of war, a time of crisis, and we feel the crisis. I hear a lot of people talking about war, but I've heard a lot of people talk about civil war, and I really don't think that if we have war, I don't think it'll be civil. I think that the war that we have will be more like a French Revolution, okay? Because if we're feeling the nature of society right now, I think a lot of people want to have their cake and eat it too, right? Or let them eat cake, or whatever it is that the nobility said or didn't say, right? I think that people are sick of oppression, financial oppression, and society-wise, like, our society isn't working for us the way that it should, and we pay a lot of taxes. So we're going to have to restructure the society, guys. And the fourth turning is a time when everything is restructured. So we are going to see a lot of things topple and new institutions come to light. I see a lot of destruction in the sense that, Pluto's in Aquarius now for its 20-year cycle, and it's kind of like Pluto acts as a plow. It destroys the old for the new to be reborn. There's always a sense of renewal associated with Pluto, because the third stage of Pluto's soul evolution is the phoenix, right? So you rise from the ashes, but there has to, you gotta burn it down first, right? And I'm not saying burn down America. What I'm saying is that there's going to be a lot of things ending and being destroyed, and then a lot of things being recreated. So changing crisis or current factors in life. Older generations are losing power. They're getting old. They're dying. Like, there's a lot of outdated values. I think the youth, even the Pluto and Sagittarius generation, their value system is very different than the boomers, who are in charge of most everything, okay? And I think that with that change in attitude with the generational powers, that points to a lot of things changing in the future, okay? We also have a culmination of anger over the injustices and inequality of how we live, right, as working people in our country. There's a cumulative pain that we're all experiencing. These common, feelings, being able to relate to common people, and everybody relates to being screwed over by the healthcare system. So it's not a shocker to us, but the systems are going to be even more shocked, because this is the trigger that will change the system, okay? As a time of conflict, we see the old being destroyed and the new arising. So what new things do you want? How are we going to direct this change? We should be proactive in the changes that are being made, because we know that change is inevitable. Like, this is happening. So let's get in there and make the things happen that we want to happen. A few things to remember during this great transition is the importance of intellectual engagement, okay? Because this is a historical time of change. So we have to share information with generations. You know, the older people need to be sharing knowledge with the younger people. People in social situations, we should be sharing information with each other, things that we know. Also correcting each other when we find that someone, or adding to information, because a lot of times, like, we have half of the story, and because people are like bees and we get all of our information from each other, you know, we're going into an era of air. You know, many of these cycles are beginning in air signs. We have generational and social, societal cycles that are now in air signs. Okay, so there's a lot of air energy, which is communicative and information based. It's just important for us to be engaged, okay, especially with the world turning as it is. All right, remember to be the change that you seek in the world. Engage with matters or issues that matter to you. Okay, what is your passion? Where can you best serve the world or your community or your family, or, you know, whatever it is to you? Like, what is your passion? Go for it. We should all try to learn something new and unlearn something old. Okay, at a great turning, there are things that we got to leave behind, right? And when we consume information, it often leads to us changing our minds and shifting our perspectives. Shifting perspectives are good because times change and you can't stay in the past. You'll get left behind. Just remember that everything changes, even the way we think about stuff, right? And so it'll be helpful for us, you know, Americans, especially as Sag risings, to be optimistic, to be open to the changes that are being made, and to be hopeful for the future and try to have an effect on the changes that are coming into our world. You know, that's the conscious way to be. Thanks for sticking around. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I'm going to try to be more creative, but also I'm going to keep an eye on all of this great transition that's going on. Society right now is on fire. Like, there's so much going on. It's such an interesting time to be alive and to actually be in the midst of a changing society. It's definitely a wild ride. Hey guys, have a great day, and I'll catch you later.